Things can happen to you when you're young that will change you forever. You may not know it at the time, but one day, when you're older looking back, you can finally see how badly it warped you. This experience left me scarred, and I will never not sleep in my own bed again. I went to a sleepover at my friend's house when we were in middle school. Her parents were out of town for the night. It was like a family emergency, I think, something about her uncle. I remember being pretty surprised that they left her alone, but I guess we were old enough and they needed to travel out of town as soon as possible. We spent most of the night doing normal stuff, junk food, face masks, watching dumb comedies. It was just the two of us, and it felt fun in that way that sleepovers do when you feel like you have the whole house to yourselves. The only downer was how often my friend kept checking her phone. She'd giggle and type something, then smirk like she was in on some inside joke. Eventually, she told me that I might meet her boyfriend later. I didn't think that much of it. I knew of her boyfriend, but I'd never met him, even though she talked about him constantly. He was older than us and in high school. I figured she meant he might call or FaceTime or something. But then she started getting a little weird. Like, she'd look at her phone all concerned and then walk over to check the window through the blinds. At one point, she even made me help check out the blinds too, and when I asked what the problem was, all she said was she was making sure nobody was out there. I thought she was joking, like maybe she was trying to creep me out. She also had a tendency to be dramatic. Around 1 a.m., we were dozing off in the living room. The TV was still on, but the sound was low. I remember I was half asleep, just barely aware of the screen still flickering in the dark. That's when someone started pounding on the back door. Not knocking, pounding. My friend bolted upright and whispered that it was probably her boyfriend. She looked excited for a second and jumped up to go to the kitchen, but then the pounding got more frantic. It wasn't like someone messing around. It sounded urgent, like someone desperately trying to get inside. My friend froze. Even she was like, this was definitely not part of the program. She yelled out through the door, asking who it was, and from the other side, this muffled male voice called back that it was her boyfriend. She peeked through the little curtain on the side of the door, then unlocked it and let him in. This guy stumbled in, slamming the door shut and locking it behind him. His shirt was streaked with blood. He was pale and out of breath, just standing there, not saying anything at first. My friend whispered to him, asking if he was okay, and reached out to him. But before she could connect with him, his eyes were darting around the room, and he was telling us that we had to turn off the lights and hide. That someone was following him. He then started walking around the house and turning off all the lights and making sure everything was locked. I didn't know what to do. He didn't look messed up in like a drug sense, but something was off. He was shaking, his hands were twitchy, and he kept glancing over his shoulder like he expected someone else to come barreling through the door. My friend and I just stood there, unsure what we should be doing. Then he made us go upstairs, and we followed him down the hall into her room where he told us to get in the closet and not to talk and not to move. We crammed into the closet, all three of us. The only light was from the outside street lamp coming in through the bedroom window, and you could barely see anything through the closet door slats. He wasn't calm. He kept whispering and muttering stuff like, "I think I lost him," and "he won't find us." I didn't know what to believe. Was someone actually after him? Did he do something to somebody else? Was he high? All I knew was that I didn't want to be there anymore. We just sat there, crammed in the closet in silence. Then we heard it. From downstairs, someone knocking on the back door. Then, nothing. Nobody said anything. I was so scared I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Silence. We must have stayed in there for over an hour, not saying anything. Then, her boyfriend got a text on his phone. I don't know what it said, but it lit up the closet when he checked it, and we heard a car pull up outside. We heard the engine and the tires on gravel. He got up, opened the closet, ran out of the room and downstairs. We heard him walk through the first floor and open the back door. Then he shouted up to my friend that he would call her later and that he was locking the door behind him and closing it. Then the door shut and he left. Then we heard the car speed off. After that, it was quiet. The two of us didn't leave the closet. We brought in pillows and blankets and stayed in there until the sun started to rise. Her boyfriend didn't come back or call her. He was just gone. I went home later that morning and never spent the night at her house again. I never found out what happened with her boyfriend either, but I still remember how scared I was when I looked at his face that night. I was never told who he was running from or why, or who knocked on the door. And that was enough to scare the hell out of me. This happened on a super humid night when I was like 12 or 13. I was at my friend's house for a backyard sleepover. Just me, him, and another kid from our grade. My friend's parents were the kind that didn't care what we did as long as we were safe and did it on their property. And they didn't care how late we stayed up as long as we weren't being loud or bothering the neighbors. His dad especially had a weird sense of humor. He loved pulling little pranks and was actually a pretty funny guy. He felt almost more like a friend than a parent. I remember once he jumped out from behind the couch in a werewolf mask and made my friend's cousin cry, which we all thought was hilarious at the time. All of this is to say that when weird stuff started happening that night, we just kind of assumed it was him. We were out in this old tent that smelled like dust and plastic, set up in his backyard. The yard was nothing huge, a shed, a couple skinny trees, and patchy grass. There was nothing particularly special about it, but it did have one of those motion lights on the back of the house that clicked on if you got too close. It felt like we were in our own little world back there. At probably around 10 p.m., we were joking around and playing Would You Rather. Then, out of nowhere, we saw the motion light from the back porch click on. We all went silent for a second, waiting for his dad to tell us to be quiet. But he didn't. So we thought it was either a glitch or an animal or something that had triggered it. Then it clicked back off and we kept talking. Then, out of nowhere, the tent started shaking. Hard. Someone had grabbed it and was yanking it from side to side as fast as they could, and pressing down on the sides of it almost to the point where they were physically touching us through the fabric. For a second, it was so intense I thought they might even rip through the side of the thing. We started screaming. Then, the shaking just stopped completely, and there was the sound of feet running away. Then, just dead quiet. A few seconds later, the back door to the house creaked open, and the motion light popped back on. My friend's dad called out to us, asking us if we were okay and to try to keep it down. We all just laughed, kind of nervously. Of course it was him. Who else would do something like that? We yelled back that we thought it was funny and that we were fine, and the tension eased. Then we heard him shut the back door and the light turned back off. We settled back in, heart still racing but trying to act cool about it. We talked for a bit longer, but eventually things started to go quiet. Both of my friends seemed to have passed out, but I couldn't really sleep because it was so humid. I tossed and turned, and a little while later I had to pee. I got out of my sleeping bag, unzipped the tent, and stepped out quietly. The air had cooled down a bit, but everything felt damp. I walked over toward the shed where there was this little patch of dirt no one really used. While I was standing there, about to pee, I noticed something. I literally saw the figure of a person crouched just behind the far side of the shed. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, but then the shape moved, like someone shifting their weight. It was a human figure, squatting, clearly trying not to be seen. I just stood there. Then I thought, okay, it's just his dad still screwing with us. At the same time, I thought it was weird that he would be out here squatting behind the shed just for the sake of a joke. I tried to break the tension by telling him that he got us earlier and that we were really scared. But the shape didn't move, didn't laugh, didn't say anything. It was just me and this figure at the edge of the property in the dark in the stillness of the night, not saying anything. There is nothing more awkward or strange than telling someone who you know is hiding that you see them, that the gig is up, but they continue to commit to it. I stood there for maybe 5 more seconds, then I turned around and walked back to the tent. That's when the backyard light flicked on again, and I reflexively looked over at the house. Through the upstairs window, I could see my friend's dad in the bathroom, light on, brushing his teeth. My body went cold, like actual cold, like I could feel the heat just drain out of me. I stood there like a stone. I slowly turned around to look at the shed, which was now lit up by the backyard light. But right as I laid eyes on it, the light went out again. Then I heard someone running at a full sprint away from the shed and off through their driveway. I immediately got back in the tent and woke my friends up to tell them what happened. We all went back in the house after that and slept inside. His dad even looked around the property for us but didn't find anything. In the morning, they all told me that they thought I was either pranking them or seeing things. But I know what I saw, or at least I know what I didn't see. I didn't see his dad outside. There was someone back there. And whoever it was, wasn't supposed to be there. I went to a sleepover once at my buddy's house. The plan was to do a scary movie marathon and try to stay up all night. This was back before streaming services and all that. It was a Friday night and his parents were out. That wasn't super unusual. They trusted him and he was pretty responsible. His older brother was just out of high school, if I remember correctly, and he also wasn't around. We figured he was at a party or staying over at his girlfriend's place. We hung out in the basement, drank Mountain Dew, and watched back-to-back scary movies. We had rented some, but my buddy's brother also had a ton of horror tapes in his room, which he collected. We went upstairs and snuck into his room to grab a few. Most of them were in their original tape cases. Some were bare but still had the original label on them, and some were just bootlegs where he'd written the titles on a white label sticker with a Sharpie. One tape near the bottom of the bunch just had a number written on it, like a time code as the title. I remember we took that one and 2 others from the collection and went back downstairs. Back in the basement, we watched 2 of the movies. The first was a cheesy monster movie that wasn't even scary, just gross and dumb. The second was an old slasher type with terrible acting but decent effects. A little past midnight, we popped in the mystery tape. It was like another 70s low-budget scary movie we had never heard of. Washed out colors, slow dialogue, and synth music. It wasn't great, but we left it on as background noise. Then, the movie just suddenly cut out. The screen flickered. It went to static, and we thought the tape had broken or something. My friend got up and fast-forwarded it to see if it was all just a total wash, but a few seconds later, a new scene came on. It was confusing at first because it looked completely different than the movie we'd been watching. We thought there might have been a mistake and someone had accidentally recorded a different movie over the original one partway through. But then we realized it wasn't an actual movie. It was shaky, handheld footage, like from a camcorder. It was from the perspective of someone walking down a dark alley. No music or sound design, no credits, no setup, nothing. Just the sound of shoes on wet pavement. Then, the camera turned a corner and pointed at a man, presumably homeless, sitting against a dumpster under a streetlight behind a building. He looked half asleep or maybe drunk. The camera just filmed him for a minute, and we started joking about what the hell this was when suddenly the camera rushed toward him. It happened fast. There was shouting and a scuffle, and then the camera jolted from side to side. You couldn't see much at all, but the sounds were awful, real, like someone getting hit hard over and over and screaming. Then it just ended and immediately cut back to the original movie we had been watching. For a second, none of us moved. Then, one of the guys said we should tell someone. My buddy, who was hosting, shook his head and said no, and that we needed to put the tape back exactly where we had found it. We rewound it and snuck it back upstairs, back in his brother's room. After that, the night was off. We went back to the basement and tried watching other stuff, but no one was laughing. We barely talked. Then, around 2 or 3 in the morning, we heard the garage door open. His brother was home. We heard him come into the house and walk around upstairs, keys jingling and the fridge opening. Then we heard him go upstairs to his room. There was silence. And then we heard him come back out of his room, come down the stairs, walk toward the basement door, and stop just outside of it. No knocking, no coming down, just standing there, listening. Then, footsteps walking away, back upstairs, and his bedroom door closing. None of us said anything the rest of the night. I called my mom early the next morning and asked her to come pick me up, told her I wasn't feeling well. I didn't talk to my buddy for a while after that, and we never brought it up again. I don't know if the others ever said anything, and I have no idea if his brother knew we watched the tape. I still wonder where that footage came from, though. Who filmed it? One thing I do know is that the time written on the front of the tape wasn't the title. It was the time code where the messed up footage started, so that whoever had filmed it could watch it again and again, whenever they wanted.